Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Terrell Odom. I'm the director in the Office for Military Affiliated Communities, located at the University of Chicago in the Provost's Equal Opportunity Programs Office. For those of us who don't know, OMAC serves as a central hub of resources, support, and programming for the university's military affiliated community, which includes the students, staff, faculty, as well as their families. I'm extremely honored to introduce the University of Chicago's Women in Boots panel discussion today. This event raises awareness for our women veterans and the vital roles they play in mission readiness and securing our freedoms. As a U.S. veteran who has served this nation honorably, I feel that it is my duty to ensure that all veterans receive their due recognition for their sacrifices for this great nation. I would like to introduce our MC and moderator for today's event, Katie Pelkey. Katie is a lieutenant commander actively serving in the United States Coast Guard, previously a search and rescue helicopter instructor pilot. She is now a first-year student at the University of Chicago Booth School of Business and advocate for veterans and military families. Please join me in welcoming Lieutenant Commander Katie Pelkey.
Thank you, Dr. Odom. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for attending. I want to start by thanking the members of the Equal Opportunity Programs Office for Military Affiliated Communities and the University of Chicago for hosting this event. Though I'm relatively new to the University of Chicago family, I've already seen the fantastic work OMAC has put into supporting and recognizing our nation's heroes. They are an integral part of what makes this community so unique. OMAC has expanded opportunities to recognize, learn about, and support military affiliated communities. In addition to organizing an annual Memorial Day program and Veterans Day recognition, OMAC has partnered with several campus and community members to raise awareness for veterans with service-connected injuries and the impact upon their lives and their families and caregivers, our heroes who identify with the LGBTQ community, minority veterans, deportation and repatriation of deported veterans, and lastly, today's event. Recently, the University of Chicago was announced as the #1 school for veterans by US News and World Report. This news confirms what we already knew about the amazing support and appreciation the University of Chicago and OMAC has for our service members. Today's event is very near and dear to me, and it is a great honor to have the opportunity to share other female veterans' personal stories, challenges, and victories. Presently, women have served in the armed forces for over 100 years and make up nearly 20% of service members. We have also seen many first events in the last 100 years for females serving in the armed forces, and I'd like to share a few with you. I'd like to start with Loretta Walsh, who in 1917 became the first woman to enlist in the Navy. She was also the first female to enlist in the military. Annie G. Fox, who in 1941 was the first female to receive the Purple Heart while serving at Hickam Field during the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. Next, we have Yeoman Master Chief Anne de Vartanian in 1959, who was the first woman to attain the rank of E9 while serving in the Navy. Brigadier General Elizabeth Hoistington in 1970 was the first female to attain star rank while serving in the Army. Lieutenant J.G. Beverly Kelly in 1979 was the first female commanding officer of a U.S. military ship while serving in the Coast Guard. Lieutenant Kelly Flynn in 1995 was the first female B-52 bomber pilot while serving in the Air Force. And lastly, First Lieutenant Marina Hurl, who in just 2018 was the first female to command an infantry platoon while serving in the Marines. These are just a few of the many incredible heroes who have served our country. I would also like to bring attention to the alumni groups that support female veterans. Chicago's Women Alliance, who provides a forum for the acquisition of new knowledge and an opportunity for like-minded University of Chicago women with great intellectual curiosity to connect, investigate, discuss common interests, and build new relationships. We also have the Military Affinity Group, Law School Veterans, Military Affiliated Students of Harris, also known as MASH, the Veteran Scholars League, University of Chicago Veterans and Family Readiness Program, Children of U.S. Veterans, and the Booth Armed Forces Group, who all provide mentoring, support, and networking for currently enrolled military affiliated students throughout the University of Chicago. Turning to today's program, our panel discussion features Vice Admiral Sandra Stoss, retired U.S. Coast Guard Deputy Commander for Mission Support, and the author of Breaking Ice and Breaking Glass, Leading in Uncharted Waters, which was recently awarded a gold medal by the Military Society of America. Congratulations, Admiral. We also have Lieutenant Commander Caroline Johnson, Weapons Systems Officer and second-year Executive MBA student and leadership lecturer at the University of Chicago Booth School of Business, and the author of the book Jet Girl, My Life in War, Peace, and the Cockpit of the Navy's most lethal aircraft, the F-18 Super Hornet, which was featured on the Today Show, Fox and Friends, and MSNBC. Please join me in welcoming our esteemed panel. Welcome, ladies, and thank you for being here today. We'll go ahead and move into some questions and answers that I'll generate, and then later on we'll have time for any questions for the audience. All right, as discussed earlier, we stand on the shoulders of the women who paved the path for many of us. And is there any person or group who came before you which you leaned on during your career?
I'll let you go ahead, Vice Admiral. You were a little ahead of me in your career path.
And heck, I've been the first everywhere I've been, it seems, so I may as well be the first one to answer a question on the panel. But first, I want to thank our hosts here today. So Denise for hosting us here at the house. I'm really privileged to be here in this beautiful room. And the history here behind this building built in 1932, and that provides a haven for all those who enter. And I think it's just wonderful that we're holding this panel here today. And to Terrell over here, who put this all together from our Veterans Alliance, I think it's just wonderful. The University of Chicago was rated the #1 school for veterans in America. That's something to be proud of. And I want to thank our audience for being here, both those here in person, and I know a lot are on the audience virtually. So thanks to everybody who showed today to listen to us. And I want to recognize Caroline, my fellow panelist here, what company I'm in. She was a published author well before me and has broken lots of barriers, including, I'm sure, the barrier of sound and many other barriers along the way. So it's really quite a privilege to be here. And Katie, it's her first time moderating a panel. I think it's great that she stepped up to lead in this role. And none of us succeed alone. And I learned that early on in my career. And I stand on the shoulders of those women who've gone before me. And the two that I want to highlight are Coast Guard SPARs. Semper Paratus, always ready, is the Coast Guard service motto. And I know we have some Coasties. We have Mary Ellen in the audience who served in the Coast Guard Auxiliary with a presidential award for all the hours she put in serving our great Coast Guard. And I want to first, though, recognize the other women's reserve. May not be any in this room, but I'll just give a shout out to those on the audience and in the room for the Navy Waves. Any Waves here in the room? I'm sure there are online. Any Air Force WASPs? I'm sure there are online. I've met a lot of these women. They're wonderful. Army WACs and Women Marine Reserves. And then there's the Coast Guard SPARs. So I stand on the shoulders of Captain Dorothy Stratton, who came into the Coast Guard Reserve during World War II and was the first director of the Coast Guard Reserve, convinced an admiral in the Coast Guard to stand up a Coast Guard Reserve. And then I picked as two mentors on whose shoulders I stood, an enlisted Coast Guard member, Olivia Hooker, who came in as a yeoman as a reserve during World War II, an African-American female. Both of these women went on to get their doctoral degrees and to serve in incredible roles in academia. And both of these women lived till well past 100. Dorothy Stratton was 107. I think Olivia Hooker was 103 when they finally passed away. And I'm honored to stand on their shoulders. I know that's a little longer than, don't worry, my answers won't all be this long. But I wanted to do homage to those women on whose shoulders I stand and recognize the audience too. So thank you very much. And Caroline, over to you.
Okay, well, first up, once again, I echo all of the Admiral's sentiments. I'm so honored to be here. I love the University of Chicago, and I love going on stage at the University of Chicago all the time. My poor TA is here in the audience, so he gets to hear me talk all the time, and I promised my remarks would be short. Katie also has a hook hidden behind her chair that she's going to pull us off stage with if we overstay our welcome. But standing on the shoulders of giants, I'm so thankful of those who went ahead of me, because I realized the sacrifice and the trails that they blazed ahead of me. I didn't realize that when I was in the moment so much of the time. I feel so privileged to be in this younger generation who it wasn't anything different to get out there and to go into fighter aviation. And I thought I belonged. I didn't know it was any different. I didn't know it was only 1.7% women. I didn't realize that in my unit of 230 people, I was going to be one of 2 women. And that's because of the incredible women that went ahead of me and paved those trails. And it wasn't until I finished flying that I kind of, read the book Call Sign Revlon and read about Kara Holtgren. Yes, did I know her story as the first woman who flew F-14 Tomcats and Carrie Lawrence? I had heard of it, but it didn't connect. And to realize actually how close we were in age, 20 years apparently at this time in my life is very much nothing. And so I stood on the shoulders of those women, and also the women who were closer to me in age, that I would, no kidding, look up to. They were 3 years ahead of me. Call sign Cottle, call sign Vargas, call sign Tattle. And I thought these women, when I walked in the room, were the coolest chicks ever, because they were doing it. They were out there flying the jets. They were out there putting in the work and making it look like it was no big deal. And so every day I would stumble and trip and fail and have a hard day, I would look to them and say, like, what can I do to be in your position? Because first off, I didn't ever know it was possible to fly fighter jets until I saw those women directly ahead of me. I didn't know it was possible to do both, to be able to have a family, have a life, and also serve in the armed forces. And so what I want to remind everyone here today and here on Zoom is that every single day you have people looking up to you. It doesn't matter whether you're walking down the street, ordering lunch, you are somebody's role model. And you need to be able to carry that burden and show them that it's possible, and continue to show up day in and day out, because that's what those women did for me. But the ones who paved the way far in the future, such as the Admiral here and Kara Holtgren and those women, but also the ones directly ahead of me, and that was men and women. But to see myself in those women was what continued to drive me forward. So those were my role models, all hidden call signs protecting their identity.
Thank you very much. I think that what you touched on was so amazing. We both have, to thank the folks that came before us, but also, set that path forward for the ones that are going to be coming behind us as well. Awesome. So the military is extremely unique for different professions. Can you tell us why you chose to join the military, and specifically maybe the branch or the specialty that you chose?
Well, Caroline, you're on a roll. Why don't you go?
I mean, is there any cooler job in the entire world than launching off an aircraft carrier at 140 knots and flying into combat and being able to utilize lethal force to do good in the world? To me, I thought there was no better thing, right? Riding a roller coaster. But stepping back to 18-year-old me, I remember talking to my dad actually a few years ago when my book first launched, and they were saying, did you always know Caroline was going to go in the military? And he's like, I was just hoping she didn't get arrested in high school, because I was always pushing the boundaries. I was pushing the limits. And when I had been accepted to the Naval Academy and accepted to Duke, he said, well, which one are you going to choose? Full ride scholarship to both. And I apparently had the wherewithal as an 18-year-old to say, I need to go to the Naval Academy because I need the structure. And I want to be surrounded by people who are choosing to serve a higher cause, who are dedicating their lives to something bigger than themselves. And I want to be part of that group. I don't think at that time I realized the service and sacrifice and what all came with that. But I think those incremental good decisions along the way that opened the most doors were really why I chose the military, and why I encourage so many people today to give the Navy, give the Air Force, Coast Guard a try, because it sets you up for the most incredible life of adventure and opens all these opportunities and all these doors that I never would have had I chosen to go into pre-med at Duke and been a doctor. And so I don't regret it for a single day, but at least I knew I needed structure at 18 years old. So,
Well, what could be cooler than standing on the bridge of a ship on an icebreaker, breaking ice in Antarctica with Mount Erebus, 12,500 feet, smoke coming out, and crushing into the ice and hitting things on a ship when you're not supposed to hit anything. What could be cooler than that? I don't know. Is flying around on an airplane, maybe not so much. No, I'm just kidding. But I thought going to sea was going to be the coolest thing. And I was the first one in my family, because that's, I guess, where this tradition of being the first started, to even serve in the military. Nobody else in my family going way back had served in the service. So I didn't have any inspiration from anybody in the family. What happened was I was living in Ellicott City, Maryland, and the year was 1976. And you might know that in 1972 was Title IX, the law providing equal opportunity and education for women and girls. And then in 1973, the Equal Rights Amendment. And then in 1975, the Congress said, all these service academies, the Army, Navy, Air Force, and Coast Guard and Marine are going to open their doors to women. They were all men until then. So starting in 1976, the first women went into all the service academies. And I was a junior in high school at that time. And my neighbor walked over a copy of the Baltimore Sun, which had done a feature article on the Naval Academy. And she said, hey, to my mom, Sandy might like this. They knew I was a tomboy, tomgirl, whatever you call it nowadays. But I was running with my three brothers everywhere. And I liked the idea, like you said, of serving something bigger than myself, going to sea, having adventure. And we'd never had the means in my family to get out and travel or do anything. So it was like a dream come true to apply for this new opportunity that had been denied people hitherto. So I applied to the Naval Academy. And then my guidance counselor said, Sandy, you have to cast a wider net. You can't just apply to one college. And I'm like, well, I don't want to go anywhere else. I want to go to the Naval Academy. And he said, well, look, I got this brochure in the mail from this thing called the Coast Guard Academy in New London, Connecticut. Let's take a look. So we poured over that, and together between the two of us, we decided the Coast Guard's a small Navy. So I may as well apply. Well, of course, the Coast Guard's not a small Navy. Although we do join the Navy in times of war, we have peacetime missions, search and rescue, law enforcement, marine environmental protection. We have ice breaking, homeland security, port security. There's a lot of missions, and both domestic and international. And we have patrol boats in the Persian Gulf and frigate-style cutters over in the South China Sea. And so I learned that when I joined the Coast Guard. Why did I pick the academy, the Coast Guard Academy? I got accepted there first. And I picked the academy, the Coast Guard Academy, because it was based on merit. And merit always mattered to me and still does. And what you did, not who you are. So not what congressman you knew for the politics, because the other service academies are political nomination processes. So I wanted to get in on my own merit, and I picked the Coast Guard, and the Coast Guard had opened all doors to women. So in 1975, when the Congress said you will open your doors, the Coast Guard Commandant said, okay, women are going to be doing every job. So we'll be putting them out on our frigate-style cutters that are armed with Harpoon and Sea-Wiz missile systems. We'll put them in our aircraft. We'll put them everywhere that there's berthing. And I didn't appreciate that at the time, but looking back, I'm so thankful I joined this Coast Guard that gave me all that I expected with the adventure and going to sea, and something I didn't expect, the opportunity to achieve my full potential, because I wasn't given combat exclusion laws and policies that restricted me in what I could do. So I'm very thankful for that. And that's why I joined the Coast Guard.
Awesome. Thank you both. I think that you touched on two really good points, is both like the excitement, of joining the military and the challenge, and then also just kind of contributing to something bigger than yourself. And I think that most veterans, both male and female, would probably identify with those reasons for sure. Let's see, thinking back about your previous military service, what was the most satisfying leadership role that you held? Either officially or non-officially.
Official or non-official. Well, officially, I loved commanding our boot camp. The Coast Guard's got one boot camp in Cape May, New Jersey. And I always counsel young people, because I was superintendent at the Coast Guard Academy too, to find their purpose, and a purpose that kind of matches up with a passion, and then pursue that. and persevere towards it instead of quitting. But I learned as I went through a 40-year career that you can change your passion and purpose and come to inflection points in your career. And I encourage everybody to be open-minded to looking at the opportunities that might come, even if you're locked into a track. And I was locked into a track of being a surface warfare officer equivalent in the Coast Guard. We call it a cutterman. So I've been 12 years at sea. I had about 18 years in at the time. And I came to an inflection point where picking another ship was the logical course of action. One of those larger Coast Guard cutters, that's Navy-size frigate type cutter. And I thought long and hard about it. Well, I had something that hold me back. I thought there was maybe something else I should be doing. And I said, what do I really love about being at sea? Is it this adventure we're talking about, the excitement, breaking glass and breaking ice or whatever it is? Or is it something else? And I thought, no, it's when the ship is in port and I'm standing there as the commanding officer looking down and I see a new recruit coming in from boot camp, just graduated. And they're coming at this new ship the first time they've reported aboard in their full dress uniform. And you know exactly what's going to happen on a Coast Guard or Navy ship. They're going to salute the wrong end. They don't salute. So the young person will walk up to the gangplank, come on board, they get slower because they don't know which end. They salute the wrong end and they get yelled at the first thing. So they're really unconfident. But then a week or two later, you see the same seaman or fireman and they're pulling on a line, hollering out with confidence. And I'm like, wow, leader development, young people developing into their full potential like I did when I was 18. That's my passion. No longer is it the adventure of being at sea and breaking the ice and all that. So I asked to not go to command another Coast Guard ship, but instead to go command the Coast Guard's boot camp in Cape May, New Jersey. And that was my enduring passion, was the people, the young people. And I went on from there after a little while to command the Coast Guard Academy. And there's nothing better than commanding Cape May with the enlisted force, because it was enlisted people on whose shoulders I stood, not just the women who came before me, but enlisted people. All officers stand on the shoulders of their enlisted troops, and we couldn't do our jobs without them. So I was so thrilled to command our boot camp.
Sweet. That's a really cool story. I can't imagine having that much influence on so many young lives. Similar to Sandra's story, I think there is so much power in going back to where it all starts, right? Whether it's boot camp, whether it's the Naval Academy for young officers. For me, and I also had these incredible experiences flying in combat, leading fellow wingmen, leading these strikes against ISIS, being the first people there on station. And, the stories that come with so much, not pomp and circumstance, but you have a cool story to tell. I saved Nadia Murad because I was overhead fighting to save the Yazidis against ISIS. I mean, there's no kidding, lots of leadership in that, right? Flying behind enemy lines in Syria, where no high value assets were authorized to go into Syria at that time. We were flying behind enemy lines unaccompanied. We'd go 15 minutes and we would lose all radio communications with any coalition assets. And we were alone and unafraid flying overhead Syria, using a keypad bombing system in Kobani because everything south of 4, 5, and 6 was hostile, right? That was some of those leadership experiences and learning that you could survive and also thrive and lead in these austere conditions. Those were pivotal moments for me that built that confidence of your young sailor walking on board, figuring out whether to salute the front or back. If I had to walk on board today, I would be that sailor standing there. But then going back to the Naval Academy, and I came in with this fire coming in from the fleet because I had been out there. I had been at the tip of the spear. I had seen pure evil exist in this world. And I knew that we were training these young men and women to be ready for that moment. And that's a lot of weight to carry. And I realized that as a midshipman, I wasn't necessarily prepared for those moments. And so when I went back to the academy, I had a lot of energy. You guys can probably tell I have a lot of energy now, but I had even more energy then. And I was like, you have to be up to the par. You have to be this, like, pretty intense, probably a very Top Gun, stereotypical fighter jockey person. And then in that year, I had this transformational experience and I realized that didn't work as a leader. students didn't want to hear from that, salty, combat hardened person who'd just been behind enemy lines. They wanted to hear from the person that cared about them and that realized who they were and what their potential was. And so it really helped me transform as a leader to understand that my job was not about fitting them into this mold to go fly behind enemy lines and put their lives on the line, but it was taking who they were and building that up and building that confidence. And so it led to paradigmatic shift in the way that I approach things. And also in the Naval Academy, revamped the leadership syllabus for all students coming through to be an authentic leadership model, where we took the students and their traits and motivators and helped them maximize those to be the most effective at their job. Because we need the people who are highly detail oriented to be the engineers, to be nuclear engineers. We need the people that are verbose and out there to be the jet jockeys who are leading missions into Syria. We need every single type that the Naval Academy recruits, and we need them to be at the best that they can be. And so that paradigmatic shift in realizing that this next generation, not only are they good, they're better than we will ever be. And it's our job as leaders to allow their gifts to shine. And so setting that kind of environment for them and allowing them to shine was just, there's nothing better than that. And that's like what continues to drive me today at UChicago and everywhere else that I go. So letting other people shine.
Caroline, I love the way that you talk about, you call it a paradigm shift. And it was the same thing I was calling an inflection point. You come to these points in your career. I think it's so important for the audience because so many people struggle and they feel like maybe they're searching, but that's symptoms are normal if you're coming to a new place and you have to kind of figure it out a little bit, because you're not going to have just a straight course for the 20 or 40 years you're in a job. You're going to be turning and adjusting course as you go. So recognizing the opportunities and then adapting to become the leader that you need to be in the situation you're in is very normal. And don't resist it, but embrace those opportunities to change.
I love it. I love both points, especially like letting people's gifts shine. I thought that was a really nice description of it. And I think that you both would probably agree that with the organization, the people are probably the most important part of the organization. And sometimes that view might get lost in the weeds. So kind of touching on that just a little bit, was there a certain decision that you made as a leadership or as a leader in any of those previous roles that you had to make like an important choice or important decision on?
Yeah, actually, so mine is sitting right here next to me. It's a book. I never wanted to write a book. I've never kept a journal. I kept a calendar that logged my flights, what I did. I never wanted to write a book. And I was actually approached when I came back from combat in 2015 by an agent and a co-author who had heard my story through the grapevine of family and friends. We made this video, first all women's cruise video, and it kind of showcased what we did. And this guy, no kidding, stalked me. Hoff Williams, he was really creepy, he stalked me and kept asking me to write this book. And I said, no, like I am not the best there ever was. I didn't go to Top Gun. I'm not your #1 person. And I am nothing special. I'm not. I was probably average at best in the jet. And I didn't want to write a book because there were so many other people who were so much more accomplished, who had done bigger things, who were really making a difference in that world. But I talked to him anyway because the opportunity was there, and I spoke with him, and we kind of put it off to the side. We had a book deal, but I still wasn't on board. And it wasn't until I was at the Naval Academy and I was interacting with these students day in and day out and realized that I didn't think I could do it. They didn't think they could do it. And I'm like, well, you're smarter, you're stronger, you have more resilience than I ever had. What makes you think you can't do it? And they were like, well, we haven't seen anyone who's gone ahead of us that showed us. And I was like, well, I have this book that's coming out that tells how many mistakes I made. It tells how messed up I was. And it kind of, peels back the curtains to help you understand and break it down in a manner that's more digestible. And it shows that, we're all just humans out here. We're humans trying to put our best foot forward. We're going to make mistakes. And then you pick yourself back up again. And so for me, it was being willing to share that story, being willing to step out and carry that burden, because sharing your story and leading and being able to be vulnerable enough to admit your shortcomings in a very public forum, that's leadership. And if you're going to be the chosen one, you were the first in every command that you were there, it's a burden, and it's a heavy burden to carry. And if somebody is strong enough to do that and has the grit to be able to do it, then that's your burden that you carry. And for me, it's exhausting. I was talking to her earlier. It's still going. It's exhausting. But I'm honored to be able to do that. And so the decision to not just say, okay, I'm going to do this book, but let's do it and be the best that we can be to inspire and empower other people to do the same. That was a huge decision for me and transformational in my career and my life, and also hopefully for other people. So that was my decision. These are all personal anecdotes. I haven't made any incredible war decisions, but yes. Over to the Admiral.
I'm going to pick just a small decision to use for a story, because not every decision has to be a massive decision. Our lives are filled with little decisions we have to make every day, and too often we don't make those decisions. So I want to talk a little bit about the importance of making the decision. And when I came into my new job, when I was a vice admiral, going into deputy commandant for mission support, like the first day I was in the job, I was in one of these big meetings with a big table and lots of people around it. And there was a decision that had been on the back burner for a long time, because I had just come into the job and the person I was relieving had been absent for a couple of months. There was a vacancy in the position, and it was too important really to have a vacancy. So there was decisions stacked up that hadn't been made. They just had to get made. And they pushed this one in front of me, and it was to spend $30 million to buy a hangar in Elizabeth City, an aircraft hangar. And it was only worth something like $6 or $7 million. But if we didn't overbid on it, we wouldn't get it, and we wouldn't have that space that we needed for our aircraft. And there was a lot that went into it and a lot of analysis, but I was asked to make this decision, and they didn't have all the answers. So I could have easily just pushed that dog back, that Twinkie, back to the staff that gave it to me and said, bring it back to me when you've got more details. And I, looked over my shoulder. There's no one else to ask permission to make this huge decision to obligate $30 million on a $6 million asset. So I signed it. And I did that because I knew I'd never get 100% of the information. And I realized there's 3 impediments to decision-making. And there's the paralysis by analysis, there's the consensus conundrum, and the being nice syndrome. And I'll go over those real quick. So paralysis by analysis is these leaders who want more information, and they're like, they can't make a decision until 100% of information is in front of them. And I'm like, I went to business school. I went to the Kellogg Business School up the road. Friendly rivalry. They used to tell us up there, Kellogg's next Nobel laureate will be there first. So we didn't care. We had our own character and culture up there. But I learned the marginal cost curve there. And you can put a lot of money into a product development, and then it gets to a certain point. There's no sense putting more money into the product because it won't get any better for the money you're putting into it. Well, the same thing with decisions. You put effort into getting all the information you want. And I thought if I get 85% of the information I need, it's going to take my staff months to get the extra 10%. Go with it. And so don't be one of those people with paralysis by analysis holding you back from decisions. And then consensus conundrum. We've got to have everybody in this room agree. No, you don't. You have to collaborate, coordinate, and all those other good C words. But at the end of the day, decision maker got to make a decision. And you don't want consensus because you're never going to have a tough decision that's got to the top of the organization, because you're only getting the tough ones when you're senior, unless it's really hard. And you're going to have some people who aren't going to agree, others who are going to agree. Someone's going to be unhappy. You make the decision. And I've seen so many leaders push off decisions for those 2 reasons. And then there's the being nice syndrome, people who are just too nice to make a decision if any one person might lose something. Well, yeah, tough trade-off decisions. Once again, you can't please everybody. So I think that in your daily lives, whether it's a big decision or a small decision, make it your mission to make decisions. Because when I was going up for 40 years, I was miserable working for bosses who couldn't make a decision. And that was maybe some of the things that made me want to quit. Not a bad boss necessarily, Because I could deal with a bad boss, I could take that on because you can see your enemy there. But if your boss is just like never making a decision, that is floating through life and you're miserable beneath because of that, that's when you get depressed and demoralized and you want to just leave. So that's my lesson on decisions. It doesn't have to be the biggest decision in the world, but don't fall victim to the consensus conundrum, the paralysis by analysis, or the being nice syndrome.
I've got something to say on that.
Yeah.
A small little decision, a $30 million decision, no big deal. That's her small decision in life. I love it, number one. And number two, at the University of Chicago, I just took decision-making last week from a Nobel laureate.
Oh.
Dr. Richard Thaler, incredible, incredible man. And so much is exactly that. At a certain point, you just have to make a decision. And, make a decision and go all in. And that decision was life-saving because those aircraft hangars that they bought at Elizabeth City, those were the rescue assets for us on station in Virginia Beach, where we would fly off the coast. And every day, no kidding, we would brief that our rescue assets were in Elizabeth City. And, it was about 150 miles for them to get out to rescue us in the area when we went down. And I actually have a couple of Naval Academy friends who went down in the area and who those rescue assets helped pick them up off of the ships that picked them up out of the water. So thank you for that great decision to keep those aircraft hangars in Elizabeth City. 6 degrees of separation. Who
I
knew?
know. That's great. What a story.
So cool.
So amazing. And I think bringing up the whole fact of just actually making the decision and those 3 different areas in which you can kind of fail at it for the 3 different reasons. I've felt victim to. I can just think of even in just the last year, I had separate decisions. And by far working for a leader that can actually say yes or no and move on to the next thing has been a monumental change for the folks that I've worked for that have been able to do that.
Yay.
Let's see, moving on, what is the biggest challenge facing leaders today?
Facing leaders. Want me to go first on this
I
one?
would love that.
Ah.
Thank you.
Okay, so in my mind, unreservedly, is that the right word? We're in academia, I got to get my words exactly right. It's a talent management. I can get those 2 words right. So when I wasn't at sea in the Coast Guard, and I was 12 years at sea, I was in personnel. So I know that talent management is to me the biggest issue. And there's all kinds of issues with talent management. And I'll just mention a couple, and it doesn't mean they're the most important ones, but maybe something that you might not think of, because certainly all of us know that workforce shortages are an issue now. The military, hard time recruiting. So the trend away from merit towards mediocrity bothers me. And I was just looking at something that Angela Merkel said in 2005 when she took over as chancellor, when she was reelected. And she said, Germany can't afford to angle towards mediocrity from merit. And we're so somehow angling that way nowadays. And we've got to be careful of that, because helping people to understand, to put their best foot forward, like you were saying, Caroline, and to thrive and strive to take those tough jobs that are so rewarding and fulfilling. You're going to have to work hard and persevere to feel fulfilled. And I don't think anyone wants an easy path, but somehow we're looking at how to make life better is make it easier for people. No, we should make it more challenging even, so that people can feel the same way we did when we had to overcome those obstacles and then come out the other side feeling so good about ourselves. So I think making sure that we uphold merit and encouraging people to be the best they can be instead of just being mediocre is really, really important. And I think the second thing that I would bring up is that our talent management is all focused right now, in my mind, on higher education in the form of a university education, a degreed education. And I, having been the president, superintendent of the Coast Guard Academy, and understanding that world, I advocate strongly for community college and vocational technology. And Pell Grants do not go to young people who want those educational opportunities. They only go to degreed programs. I don't know if you all knew that, but Pell Grants are only for degreed programs. And why can't Pell Grants, for instance, be for people looking at VOTEC or community college? So I think that even though we're standing here at a wonderful, one of the best universities in the country, it's not for everybody. And why not recognize real diversity of people who want to work with their hands or have incredible talent in the arts, and they want to do something that is going to be a certificate and get a real skill to go out and make a difference and get a good job. So I think that the biggest challenge facing leaders is talent management and some of the obstacles like merit and not promoting different ways to get your education and your training are part of what's hurting our leaders and managers.
Yeah. I think that's a fantastic discussion. I could talk about talent management all day, every day, and leadership. That's what I do. And that's something I wholeheartedly support. I think on the military, we have a rising challenge. We've got rising world powers that we haven't necessarily thought of in the past decade, in the past 2 decades. And I think the military is actively working on that. And I think once again, we need the best and brightest people to not only join the military, but also the military needs to retain those people. And so I think there's a whole discussion going on around that. The military is figuring out how to do that. And despite what some of us as veterans who've transitioned out think, the military is actually at the leading edge of a lot of these initiatives of how do you develop and retain the best talent. So I think it's going in the right direction. I think here at the university and other places in the world, in addition to that, we have a lot of division. And so I think bringing people together and helping people focus on these bigger challenges that are looming on the horizon is one way to unite us as a country and academics with military. Katie being here at the University of Chicago on academic duty, essentially, you're on active duty, but in academia, I think those are great initiatives. And so I think across the board, just kind of challenging the status quo, bringing people together, bringing thought leaders together, and just being better as a common unit is something that's going to help us overcome a lot of these just challenges. We're facing headwinds right now, and we need to continue to work and do better and be better. So I don't know. I was going to pass on that question, but okay, here we are.
You took a strategic perspective, though. I like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on to maybe something that's a little bit more of a personal lesson that you had in your past experience. What would you say is something that you learned along the way, that maybe allowed you to pivot or make a big change or just kind of see things a little bit differently?
Oh boy. Yeah, personal anecdote was similar to what I learned in going to the Naval Academy and similar to what I learned in choosing to go naval aviation or fly fighter jets was if the opportunity's there, apply for it. Put yourself out there. And so many of us here in the room, we've been through school, we've been through college, we've been through these programs, but there are just so many incredible opportunities out there. If you don't step up and put your name in the hat and put your best foot forward and say, hey, I want to raise my hand, I want to do that, you'll never know if it could have been. And so regardless of if it's a community volunteer opportunity or, a follow-on fellowship somewhere or, a new job that you see that's like, wow, I could really make a difference in that job. Put yourself out there because you never know. The worst that could happen is they tell you no, but 90% of the time you might hear yes. And those are the things that can be truly rewarding or lead you to these incredible accomplishments that you'll be able to look back and be like, man, that was a pivotal career decision. And so I think putting yourself out there, putting your best foot forward and just going for it. I could tell you about most every good opportunity I've ever had is because I didn't think I had a shot in the world to be able to do it. And I said, well, if not me, then who's going to get it? So yeah, over to you.
I've got a whole career full of learning points that made me who I am today. And for anybody in the audience who's a younger person who wonders how they could be Caroline or I someday, it's a 40-year journey to get where I am and a 20-some-odd-year journey to get where you are. So it's one step at a time, one lesson learned at a time. So I'll go to a lesson that I learned later in my career. I was superintendent at the Coast Guard Academy, and a woman came in to see me, and my administrative assistant said, "There's someone here to see you," and was unannounced. But I said, "Well, bring her on in." And she had just dropped her son off at NAPS, Naval Academy Prep School in Newport, Rhode Island. And she was stopping by on her way home to check out the Coast Guard Academy because her kid was going to NAPS, sure, but she had heard good things about the Coast Guard. And so I had a chance to sit down with her in my office and just talk about young people. And of course, at the Coast Guard Academy, that's what we do, is we try to recruit and retain and graduate and commission young leaders of character. And she happened to be an African-American woman. And I asked her, I said, boy, you should be proud of your son. He's up at NAPS. I said, do you have any ideas for how we at the Academy here, how I can attract a more diverse cohort of young people to come into the Coast Guard Academy? And she looked at me and she gave me the wisest words I'd heard in years. And she said, Sandy, you've got to reach out your hand and meet them where they are. You got to meet them where they are. So how many times have we in our lives wanted somebody or something and said, come to me, I'm sitting here, I'm this Coast Guard Academy on the hill, come to me. We don't think of it the other way around. If we want somebody to be better behaved, we want our kids to be behaved as well as we are, we want them to come and meet our standards. We don't ever think of reaching out to meet them where they are. And so Renee told me, she said, look at those young people who have a cell phone in their hand all the time. She said, meet them where they are with that cell phone in their hand instead of thinking it's a bad thing, and show them how on your new patrol boats, you've got a whole bridge with everything electronic. And if they think that smartphone is good, they haven't seen anything. The cockpit of a jet or the bridge of a ship with all this electronics, and you can be saving people's lives or doing a mission at the same time. And she gave me that kind of advice, and man, so all my speeches at the Academy from there on out had a whole section in meeting them where they are. If you're mentoring somebody, instead of just telling the person, hey, be like me, meet them where they are and find out who they are, because maybe they're not anything like you. And maybe they're a unique person who needs to be met where they are and nourished where they are and grow in their row instead of transplanted back to where you are. So you can tell I'm passionate about this because it was a huge lesson I learned, because I had subconsciously been expecting people to come to me all those years. And only when I started reaching out my hand to meet them where they were did I feel like I'd really matured as the leader I needed to be as a senior leader in the Coast Guard.
Those are awesome lessons. Yeah, for sure. I think for the whole opportunity one, that's something that it's like, you got to put yourself out there, to be able to take advantage of an opportunity. And sometimes it feels vulnerable to be able to do that, but the rewards can be so huge, it can be worth it. Absolutely. Moving on to more of like an organizational level perspective, how can organizations balance the tactical versus strategic imperatives?
I'll take this one. I honestly think so much of the time we get super tactical, right? Because you're trying to put out the daily fires. We all have too much on our plates. And even you look at this event here today, all of us, everyone's sitting back in their office on Zoom, especially during the pandemic. People are working from home, or people are heads down, trying to stay safe by staying away from people. And we have never worked harder than we have over the past 2 years, trying to take care of your family and balance working from home and doing this. And you get so lost in the tactical day to day. And some of us, especially right now, we've lost kind of the strategic out of our scan. We forget to pause and pull up and go to the conferences and realize, oh wait, there is something bigger on the horizon. This is the goal we're marching towards. We've lost kind of that far-sighted vision. And so I think now more than ever, we have to consciously pull back, stop ourselves, pull ourselves up from the day-to-day, pull our teams up, even if you're the junior person and you've got a senior boss that you're working for and saying, hey boss, why don't we take a tactical pause and we pull up for a day to really challenge ourselves to think about, is this the goal we're still striving towards? Has it changed over the past 18 months or 2 years? And where can we be better? Where are people really struggling? I was just talking, I had lunch with a friend on Monday and I was like, how are you free on a Monday? You work like 80-hour weeks. She goes, well, our company forced us to take 2 days off as a mental tactical pause because everyone is burned out, everyone's quitting. and she's at one of the top companies in the country. And so all of us are kind of in that moment, like you're seeing. And so I would challenge you, take a second, even if that's a day of reflection, that's a day of just, hey, I need to take a break, and think about those things and really challenge yourself and your teams and your bosses to let's pull up for a second, let's balance it out. Previously, it was part of our normal day-to-day. Every few months, you'd pull up, go to a conference, you would have an offsite, you would have something like that. But right now, we're not doing it. And so we just all need to kind of bring that back up into our awareness and embrace it, because we'll be so much better as organizations when we do.
Yes, it has to be deliberate though, right?
Yep.
So when I was working as the executive assistant to the Commandant of the Coast Guard, I was in 06 and it was Admiral Allen, Admiral Thad Allen. He was the 010. And he had a saying about how people were caught in the tyranny of the present. And that was his phrase. And he hated it because, yeah, we all have to operate in the present in the present with the tactical. You got to get it done. But it can really fill your plate up every day. And you can go home after 12 hours and still not have finished the tactical stuff on your plate. Where the heck is there time for strategic? So what I came up with was a little bit of a thought for organizations and leaders going through change who need to look strategic. And I think it comes from my time on a ship, on a bridge, because I looked over the horizon to see if there's any threats coming, like another ship who's going to have a close point of approach to you if you don't take action, and way in advance. You can't just wait till the collision is imminent. And also you look at a radar and you see, you turn it to a small scale and then a bigger scale so you can see further out. So I think we learned that because we both used radars and you look over the horizon. So you're not just looking in at the small scale. And so I learned that from my operational. And then when I became into decisions and staff, I said, you know what? People have to, it's 4 A's. You have to anticipate. So look over the horizon. What's coming at you for a threat? Have you done your SWOT for your company's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats? What's your customer going to need next year? So that's your anticipate. Then there's the adapt to what you've got to do differently. And you've got to embrace the fact that you need to change a little bit. Not just say, well, I'm willing to change if I have to. Actually embrace the opportunity to change. And then you've got to adjust, which means setting new expectations for people because change is hard. And then you've got to be agile and you've got to be ready to respond to, once again, getting back tactical to what now is coming back around with having looked over the horizon at what's strategic. So strategic always comes back to tactical eventually. So it's a virtuous cycle of anticipating, adapting, adjusting, and being agile. And I think that's really a good formula for leadership in the current age.
Awesome. Thank you, Admiral. I love the analogy of kind of taking that practical application as what you learn like as a junior and mid-grade officer and then applying it to kind of the strategy and higher level management. You know, a lot of times people kind of find themselves stuck, not being able to see the forest through the trees. And so this next question is kind of a spin-off of that. When you're kind of like in the thick of things, how do you stay inspired about your organization's or maybe your unit's mission at that time?
I can go, I'll give a short answer. I'm a real fan of lifelong learning. And somebody once asked me, it was my mother-in-law of all people. She said, what made you stay for 40 years in the Coast Guard? And so I've always told people it's hard work and performance that equals success. Hard work and perseverance. How could I mess that P word up? Perseverance. So I persevered through a lot of stuff, and we won't get into those stories. They're in my book. But wait a minute. They're in her book too, Perseverance. So I thought, wait a minute, perseverance is not the same. It's why I stayed motivated to stay in. Because perseverance means putting your head down and driving through and not quitting. But being motivated is different. So you can't always count on your boss to motivate you or other people in the workplace, although that should be the hallmark of a positive workplace with a good culture of inclusion. Everyone should be motivating everybody else. You can't count on it. So how about self-motivation? So lifelong learning is what I would offer up. And here we are in higher ed, but I am passionate about reading and keeping up with lifelong learning, always looking to learn something new to keep me excited about where I'm going and what's ahead. If you don't do that, you're going to get maybe trapped into that lack of motivation spiral. And then all your people go right down with you if you're a leader, because leaders have to stay motivated. So it's on you. If you can't get motivation from your workplace, it's on you to get your own motivation, because it's not just you. You're responsible for motivating everybody beneath you. And if you're not motivated, it's going to show in the classroom, maybe when you're at the Naval Academy, although you're always overly motivated. Isn't Caroline always motivated? But it's a big deal. So I think motivation is key, and lifelong learning will get you that.
So that was a great answer. I'll tell a personal anecdote because I struggled with this. I very actively struggled with this. When I was in the fighter community, we had just come back from deployment in 2015. I was still doing the coolest job in the world, which was flying. I was getting all my qualifications, my mission commander qual, my division lead qual, and I was finishing my master's degree at the same time. So on paper, everything was going great. I was crushing it, right? Like, who does that? Who gets a master's degree while they're doing all these quals? Not many people. But inside, I was miserable. I was absolutely miserable. We had come back from deployment at the end of 2014. I obviously had a lot on my plate. Socially, I was dealing with a lot of challenges in my squadron, being one of those only women. You know, my best friend had abandoned me. I didn't feel like a part of the social fabric of my squadron. And I was really struggling, feeling like the odd man or woman out. And I didn't really want to be here anymore. So it was a tough time, and I was really struggling. I saw a lot more of the forest than the light in the trees. And for me, it was focusing on what was important for me and refilling my cup. And so for me, that was my family. That was being around my family, reconnecting with them after a year of being away, and letting them lift me up, because I am overly motivated. I could be the top. But we're not, right? We all struggle at times. And so leaning on my family and allowing them to lift me up, and my friends who did matter to me. And, you know, as little as going to the beach on a Saturday or doing those things that I loved, cooking for me is one of those, knowing what my hobbies and my passions and my releases were, and allowing myself to do that. Because a lot of the times as high performers, we will go, we'll charge, we'll press through. And that's not what we need right then and there. And so refilling your cup and taking care of yourself and putting yourself first and your family first is like the most important. So figuring out, doing that reflection, pulling up into the strategic, because this is your strategic strategy, how you're going to get through life when times get tough. Thinking about that now, so that when you do have those times where you're struggling and you don't know if you can put one foot in front of the other, you're able to resort back to that. Building your network, investing in those people, because a lot of times we lose sight of it. And so for me, my family carried me through. I turned the page. I went back to the Naval Academy to teach the future generation. I realized how important we were to them and how we could invest in them to carry the torch forward in the Navy. And that's what then drove me from there. And every time, I keep these core values with me, but I also continue to iterate and find what's next in the world. What's going to be my why? Why do I still show up? And I go back to that every single time I'm struggling. So that's my anecdote.
That's awesome.
Love it. Love Simon Sinek.
Yeah.
So great. It kind of touches on the next question. One that, a lot of us probably, especially being professionals and high achieving, highly motivated folks, is, what does work-life balance mean to you? And you kind of touched on that a little bit, how you go back to your family, but if there's anything else, and Admiral, for you too.
Oh, yeah, how about you?
Well, I went skydiving last week.
Yeah, wow.
I was telling the Admiral, it's been a crazy, crazy year. I moved to Chicago in May. I've been in my house about 28 days since I moved here. So I've been on the road a lot. And I was out in Hawaii doing a consulting engagement out there, helping develop a program to help people in the Navy. And every weekend I would go out. I went, the first weekend I went hiking, I went cliff jumping, I went scuba diving, because clearly I have a need for speed and I don't fulfill that flying jets anymore. And so I carve out really specific time. I work really hard when it's time to work. And then I actively, no kidding, like turn off the notifications on my phone from my email. I turn off email, and I go, and I do the things that I love and I'm passionate about. And then that recharges my batteries for enough. And then I went 10 days solid of work of just back-to-back teaching, going to a week of MBA courses, working Navy Reserve stuff. And I was just going too hard. And now I understand myself enough. And at 35, I have a little perspective of, hey, I got to slow down. I got to stop. So for example, yesterday I took the day off. My agent kept calling me. I almost put my phone on silent, like, stop calling me. I can't deal with this. But I took the day off, and I, no kidding, slept for half of the day because I had to recharge my batteries to come here today and to start that next round. But balancing that, being very thoughtful about it, curating what you love to do and making sure that's part of your regular rhythm, I think is so important, because I'm not a fun person to be around if I don't do that stuff. And at least I have the self-awareness now to be able to know that. So yeah.
I got a little bit of different take, and it's not going to be me as much as when I was superintendent at the Coast Guard Academy. I noticed that young cadets, women cadets, would ask me, ma'am, women are telling us we should have it all. We should do everything. We should be able to be an admiral like you and have a whole family and volunteer at the PTA and have a dog. And we just don't see it as, feasible. Some of us are stressed because we feel like there's a lot of pressure to be everything, to have it all. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I need to come up with some kind of a message for these young women. And so I came up with this menu analogy. So say you're going to look at, can you have it all? And it actually came, another piece of information on there came to me from a good friend of mine. Her name is Rhonda Cornum. You might have heard of her. Brigadier General in the U.S. Army. She was the first woman prisoner of war during Operation Desert Storm. And Rhonda told me, her mom told her, Rhonda, you can have anything you want, but not everything you want. And I'm like, wow. So success is different for everybody. And it's not everybody wants to have everything that's available out there, and nor can they do that. And they might be stressed and frustrated if they try. But a person has to find out what's right for them. And so the menu analogy I came up with helps people understand that. You go to a restaurant and you get this big menu and you open it up, it's 5 or 10 pages, and you can't possibly order everything off that menu. It won't fit on your plate, it won't fit in your stomach, and your wallet can't pay for it. But you can come back to that same restaurant for maybe each week for a year, and you can sample a lot of things off that menu over time. And maybe you don't even like dessert. Maybe you don't even want to even try a dessert. Whereas somebody else might think, well, heck, having it all means I'm going to have dessert on this menu and appetizers. So I think we women are too judgmental of each other, and more senior women are pushing younger women to have it all because they paved the way and you should do everything. And no, like Caroline was saying, you get burned out. So you need to figure out what it all means for you. And the menu analogy helps people understand that you can pick and choose over time things that you want, and you don't have to worry about what somebody else tells you, because they get to order off their menu. Don't let them try to force you to order off your menu. And you see that all the time with people telling some young woman, here's what you should do, instead of meeting them where they are and finding out what success means to them and what the menu looks like for them, trying to push them into a completely full plate scenario that they can't really even eat or pay for in the long run.
Love that. That's a lesson I'm still trying to learn about the work-life balance and not being able to have it all. I think that's such an important.
It's okay not to
Right.
It's okay for you not to have somebody else's version of having it all.
Absolutely. Kind of going on that of, just having too much at once. Today, our lives seem so busy, and there's just so much information and tasks constantly coming at us all the time. What kind of strategies do you use in your lives to effectively prioritize the myriad of tasks, that you might have on a day-to-day basis?
Sounds like Caroline's got that down.
That's a good joke. I have to be like a crazy person with lists. I prioritize, right at this point in my life, sitting here today, I can't see more than 2 weeks out ahead of my face. It's just too much. And it's just, I'm kind of in like survival mode right now. So I keep lists. And when I think of something, I write it down on my list. I schedule things out very carefully. And I also keep things simple. From that menu, there's some stuff that I normally do and I would normally do to either save money or curate my life a certain way that I've just kind of let go control of, which is, as a very highly in control OCD person, is tough for me. But I've learned that I have different priorities now, and that's okay. And I know the things that are quote unquote life or death that are going to make me sink or swim. And I know the things that, you know what, give yourself a little bit of grace and tell people no. And so even with speaking or work, you know, if I don't get paid for it, I can't do it these days. You have to draw the line somewhere. You have to create healthy boundaries and say, hey, this is important, this is not. That's kind of where I'm at today, but I keep it simple because I don't quite have the capacity to do anything else at this point.
I think prioritizing is really, really hard. And it goes back to personality types. And I have a theory of diversity that personality, the cognitive diversity is so important. And it's overlooked. Whenever you hear the word diversity, you think automatically of gender, race, or something. But really, why do we just ignore the person's brain, you know? So I'm an introvert, and so I'm motivated differently than an extrovert. My personality is different. I'm not engineer. I'm a more artsy person. And I'm going to think a lot differently and prioritize differently. So I once had my admin assistant up at the Coast Guard Academy. And oh my goodness, if I put 3 folders into her inbox, she couldn't prioritize them. It was the last one in that had to be the first one out for her because she had a little OCD, which is good. I mean, that's personality trait. You can't help it. And it was a very beneficial one as an admin assistant because you have to be on the ball. But I had to carefully tell her, this one's more important than that one, even though I gave it to you earlier this morning and 2 more have come on top of it. You've got to go to the one that came in earlier this morning and get that one done. So respecting and understanding people's personalities and in your own personality, and you said something about give yourself grace, I would encourage everyone to take a personality test, like a Myers-Briggs or a DISC if you're working in a team or a group, and find out what kind of personality you have so you can understand what's best for you, how you can prioritize best and with the least stress, because it is hard and there is too much out there. And that was the recommendation I'll leave you with, because there's a lot you could say about how to prioritize, but get to know yourself so that you can be graceful with yourself and understand where your priorities ought to be based on your personality type a little bit more than we're apt to do.
Awesome. I have one final question before moving it over to if anybody has questions in the audience or online. Given your status as a student veteran and a supporter of the University of Chicago, how would you describe your interactions with OMAC? And if given the chance to make changes to services for veterans and their families, what would you change and why?
That's obviously Caroline.
Terrell and OMAC. I mean, you guys have transformed my experience here at the University of Chicago. No kidding, Terrell got my number like before I even started, and he reached out to me and made me feel like I was at home. He has been the #1 person I call when I'm in crisis, when I'm having a meltdown. I don't call anyone else because he advocates for us. He stands up for us. He knows how to fight the battles that I can't fight myself, right? Kind of that prioritization question. I'm at my wit's end all the time, balancing teaching, balancing being a student and speaking and doing all this other stuff. My bandwidth is low. And so being able to, number one, have the vulnerability to call in somebody else to step up for us, like I could think of no better program. And that is what transformed the University of Chicago into the #1 Veterans University. And that's why I chose the school. They don't pay me to say this. They didn't ask me to say this. This is why I chose this institution over other top-ranked institutions in the country, is because they reached out, they made me feel at home, and they made me feel like I was going to be cared for here. And that's like the #1 most important thing. They met me where I was at, exactly what the Admiral said, and there's nothing better than that. And so to continue to grow that program and provide that for other students, provide a community, especially for people who have sacrificed so much through their military services, is more than I could ever ask for. And so I'm so thankful for it. And it's taught me more about servant leadership than I could ever learn in my life. So thanks, Terrell. Thank you. I really appreciate it. OMAC team, I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Awesome. I think we can go ahead and turn to if there's anybody in the audience that may have a question.
see one up here.
Yeah, okay. Here we go.
I've got a book for the first one, a Modern Warriors book. Sign it for you. They're getting your volume on. We're good?
Hello. Oh, hi. My name is Kevin. I'm a University of Chicago alumnus, U.S. Army veteran, entrepreneur. I just want to thank you guys for today. Amazing wisdom. And while you guys were speaking, I was thinking about when I was in the Army, enlisted 2003. I was in the combat observation laser team, forward observer. So I was calling on, fire support. And we were in some tough times. And I always recall Pistol 6 was a woman, military police. She was always there for us. And if it wasn't for her, we probably would have took some more losses than we should have. So thank you so much. I think it's super underappreciated how much women do for the military on the front lines in combat. So thank you so much. That's all I had to say.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Kevin.
Kevin.
Thank you.
Where were you at in 2003?
I was in Iraq, Baghdad,
In Baghdad, in Ramadi?
Al-Mansur province.
You get a copy of this book, and so one of my former boyfriends, Minotaur, in here, he was in Ramadi with you guys. He was a combat engineer, and so some of his experiences were incredible. And so I lived through some of that with him, and then to be able to have that perspective, then going overhead and protecting the troops on the ground when you'd go out beyond the wire. You guys helped Buddy laze some of our weapons into the targets. And I have like the utmost respect for ground troops and everyone who serves, but that's what we were there to do. Since you made the first comment, asked the first question, I got a copy of Modern Warriors for you. This is another book that I'm in, and I'll sign it for you after this. So.
Thank you. Are there any other questions in the audience?
So we do have a couple of questions that are online, but first I wanted to thank Commander Pelkey for doing a phenomenal job of moderating. Thank the Admiral naturally for coming out and being with us again. She was with us for Women Veterans Day. And thank Commander Johnson as well. We do have a lot of conversations at nighttime because I'm catching her in between skydiving and parasailing and everything else that she's doing. But there's a couple of questions online. So the first that we had was from First Sergeant Cheryl Lynn Woodhouse. In your current jobs, when you have a high qualified female applied for a higher position, but someone else is selected whom you both know, what and how do you go back and convey the news to the qualified woman as to why the other person was selected over the highly qualified skills?
Ooh. I wonder if she means if the woman was better qualified and a man was picked instead.
It sounds like, Admiral, that the highly qualified female applied for a higher position, but someone else is selected whom you both know. What and how do you go back and convey the news to the highly qualified woman as to why the other person was selected over highly qualified skills? So it sounds like the woman had more highly qualified skills, but the other person was selected.
Well, I can just say one thing to help people understand the government hiring process is you can't go back and tell somebody who wasn't selected why another person was. So there's all these incredible rules for civilian personnel hiring that come out of the Office of Personnel Management. So part of the problem is that we can't talk to applicants and candidates. And they'd love to know why they weren't selected and why somebody else was. And they conjure up in their mind things because they can see a little bit, but they can't see the whole application. And they come up with ideas that maybe they were better qualified and it was some other reason why they weren't picked. Sometimes it's just that we can't say, because I had to be in charge of those hiring processes. So it's frustrating because we would like to tell people more so they could understand and they would like to know more, but you can't tell them. So I think when people get back and tell somebody that they didn't get the job, it's probably almost like a cold feeling. There's not a warm fuzzy on the other end, and that's frustrating for people too. And I think that quite frankly, government personnel has to change the hiring processes have to change a little bit. Right now, they're not very warm and welcoming. We have to, I think, re-examine them, but that's kind of where I'd leave it there. I can't really talk about maybe the details that she's interested in. I don't know how to answer that, but I can tell a little bit like I did about maybe where the hiring process should go in the future.
And I can give you from a private sector perspective what I think it's always challenging. You have amazingly qualified candidates, and sometimes somebody is pre-selected for a job and you have overly qualified candidates. And I think honesty and is key, and helping people understand, there could have been other factors at play that perhaps, were prioritized this time, and encouraging them, let's think about your overall goals here and use it as an opportunity to grow and develop, and think about your overall skills, your goals in life, and how we can choose and help mentor somebody perhaps to their another step. Because when one door closes, it's not closed. It's not the end of the story. We have to, as people with resilience, look at these failures as just small bumps in the road that you can just go around. That one door closed, but the one right to the left of you could be open. And so let's widen focus our goals, perhaps widen the aperture if that's what it takes, and then go a different direction. Life isn't fair. We all know that life isn't fair. It's not going to help your candidate to hear, oh, well, life isn't fair. That just happens sometimes. But hey, you know what? That the decision's been made. How can we adapt and overcome in a different direction that might be a better fit at the end of the day? So I think that's a fantastic question, and we all know the disappointment of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Shipmate. So I think this next question speaks towards the Admiral's comments in regards to reaching people where they are. And I definitely want to give a shout out to the Operation Her Story for the All Women's Honor Flight that took place yesterday with, I believe it was 94 women veterans back from the Korean War up until Desert Shield, Desert Storm, that flew to DC to see the memorial. But we know we're making a bigger effort to support and bring awareness for female veterans once they've left service. But can you both tell us, are there any specialized efforts made to recruit and advance women in regards to the military, being on active duty, reserve, or guard? And are there practices that you would like to see implemented to improve upon what is being done today?
Well, I haven't been in the Coast Guard for 3 years. And I know, Caroline, you've been out even longer from the Navy, but for as long as I was in the Coast Guard has been reaching out, trying to recruit more women. And it's hard. It's hard to nowadays. Well, in any given year, maybe it's always hard to recruit anybody. I don't care what it is, a white male or a woman or minorities. Recruiting's hard, trying to convince people to come in and serve their country, because there's a lot of good jobs to be had out there. And we do try to target and have programs to target women to appeal specifically to that cohort. And we do targeted advertising, targeted recruiting the best we can, but there's more we need to do. I think that all the services look at their recruiting budgets pretty carefully, and the Coast Guard, we need more money in that area, because really it takes money to recruit and to reach out and have special programs designed to have an impact. So I don't have the best answer on that, but that's what I would say is that I know the Coast Guard, and I'm pretty sure all the other services are trying really hard to recruit everybody they can. And it just takes money and time and effort and policies and programs.
I mean, I think I've been off active duty for 2 years, and I think Katie is actually probably a great person to answer this question. However, I think on a one-on-one basis, there are always programs that exist within the organization and policy that exists to improve the retention of different subsets of minority groups, which I think are fantastic efforts. But I think on a one-on-one basis, and every single one of us in our organizations can think about allyship and mentorship and breaking down barriers through mentoring and caring and reaching out to other people. And so I think every single one of us in the room, number one, you should have a mentor. that looks different than you, that has a different background, that thinks differently than you. And you should also have the same from your mentees, because that's how you're going to create real diversity of thought and really strong teams. And when they look good and you sponsor them and bring them up with you, they're going to do the same for you. It makes you look better within the organization. So kind of this grassroots attitude and change of mentoring, trying to retain, promote diverse talent is the most important thing that we can do. And that's what's going to lift the force as a whole. So I think programs and policies, yes, absolutely. We have to continue to build those out. But one-on-one, every single one of us on this call can be better and support our shipmates, for lack of a better term, in the organization better. So soldiers, Kevin.
Thank you so much. And the remainder of the comments are just thanks again to the panelists for such an excellent talk. And I'll turn it back over to Commander Pelkey.
Awesome. Thank you. Let's see. Thank you. So I'll go ahead and do the closing remarks now. Thank you to our panelists for sharing your extraordinary experiences and stories with us. Your insight into the female veteran experience will help the university shape more meaningful program, resources, and support for our heroes. Thank you to OMAC for embodying inclusion and affording our heroes the opportunity to share within the community. And then thank you to all the participants for your support of military affiliated community. Awesome.